Hey, friends. If you think TV exaggerates the Wild West, and wait until you hear what actually happened.
The Wild West wasn't wild because of outlaws. It was wild because everyone was out of their minds. 1. The outlaw who mailed himself to jail. Some outlaws went out in a blaze of glory. This guy went out in a box, literally. After years of botched robberies and living on the run, one exhausted outlaw decided he was done with crime, and apparently also done with walking. So he packed himself into a wooden crate, scribbled "to the sheriff" on the lid, and mailed himself straight to jail. When the box arrived, the confused clerk thought it was a weird piano delivery. But when the sheriff pried it open, out popped the dustiest, most tired man west of the Mississippi. The outlaw even included a polite note that read, "Here is a criminal. Open with care." It's possibly the first and only case of a man turning himself in through the U.S. Postal Service. Forget wanted dead or alive. This guy shipped himself priority mail, signature required. 2. Soapy Smith and the explosive soap scam. Before influencers were selling detox teas, the Wild West had Jefferson Soapy Smith, the original king of fake giveaways. His con was simple: stand on a soapbox, literally, and wrap cash around bars of soap. He'd then sell the bars for $1 each, promising that one lucky buyer might unwrap a $100 bill. The catch? The only winners were his own planted accomplices, cheering in the crowd. The real customers just walked away with overpriced hygiene and a life lesson in capitalism. Soapy made a fortune, earning a reputation as the man who could sell dirt to a miner. Eventually, his luck ran out when he got into a shootout over, what else? Money. The moral of the story? The Wild West didn't invent scams. It just made them dusty, loud, and slightly more explosive. 3. The dentist who got his tooth pulled. Meet gunslinger Clay Allison, a man whose approach to customer service feedback involved firearms and pliers. After a dentist allegedly yanked the wrong tooth, Allison didn't just leave a bad review. He returned to the office, pistol in hand, and demanded an immediate refund. Then, in an act of poetic justice or sheer lunacy, he tied the poor dentist to his own chair and pulled out one of his teeth. "Now you know how it feels," Allison supposedly said before walking out. It was perhaps history's first and most aggressive example of a Yelp complaint in action. Locals were horrified, but word spread fast. Never cross a man who believes dental pain should be shared equally. In a town full of outlaws, he somehow managed to make his dentist the victim. It's proof that in the Wild West, even a toothache could end in gunfire and regret. 4. The town that arrested a train. When the railroad company in Chama, New Mexico refused to pay its local taxes, the sheriff didn't file a complaint. He filed an arrest warrant for a steam engine. In an act of small-town justice so bold it deserves its own western, he marched down to the tracks, wrapped a heavy chain around the locomotive, and officially declared it under arrest. Imagine being one of the passengers that day, sitting in your seat while the sheriff reads the train its rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. Choo-choo. The engine was literally held hostage until the company coughed up what it owed. No getaway, no chase. Just a very confused conductor watching his train get handcuffed. It's the only time in American history that law enforcement successfully detained a piece of machinery. The moral? Don't mess with small-town sheriffs. They'll arrest your train, your tractor, and probably your coffee pot if it owes back taxes. 5. The duel in the dark. As if dueling wasn't already dumb enough, two Texans in the late 1800s decided to make it even dumber. They'd fight in total darkness. Their idea was that shooting in pitch black would make it fair. What it actually made it was insane. The two men stood in a closed, unlit room, armed with pistols, waiting for the sound of the other to fire first. Within seconds, one managed to trip over a chair, knock over a candle, and set his own hair on fire. That brief, tragic flash of light gave his opponent the perfect glowing target. The duel ended instantly. One dead, one missing eyebrows. Locals called it the stupidest gunfight in Texas, which is saying a lot considering Texas practically invented stupid gunfights. It's the kind of logic only whiskey and wounded pride could produce. Somewhere, even the ghosts of the Wild West were probably face-palming. 6. Emperor Norton, the self-proclaimed ruler of America. In 1859, San Francisco businessman Joshua Norton lost everything in a bad rice deal. Most people would have declared bankruptcy. He declared himself Emperor of the United States. He printed his own money, issued royal decrees, and walked the streets in full uniform while locals bowed and saluted, mostly for the spectacle. The city loved him so much that restaurants accepted his homemade currency just for the story. He even wrote to Queen Victoria asking for an alliance. When he died, 30,000 people attended his funeral, the biggest one San Francisco had ever seen. In a land obsessed with authority, he created his own from pure imagination and charisma. Technically, he was homeless. Spiritually, he was royalty. It's the only time America had an emperor, and it worked out fine because, for once, the crown didn't come with taxes or war, just good vibes and great mustaches. 7. The outlaw who tried to rob the same train twice. Meet Black Bart, the gentleman bandit of California, famous for his politeness and his terrible luck. In the 1870s, Bart robbed a Wells Fargo stagecoach and got away clean. Feeling confident, he decided to rob the exact same route again a few years later. Only problem, the company had been waiting for him. As soon as he shouted his trademark line, "Please, kind sirs, hand over your gold," the guards opened fire. Bart dropped his hat, his mask, and his poetry notebook. Yes, he was also an amateur poet. When he escaped, investigators found his verses at the scene, rhyming threats written in flowery prose. It's like if Shakespeare and a raccoon decided to start a life of crime together. When he was finally caught, Bart refused to name accomplices, explaining, "I had none. Just him, his shotgun, and a dream that didn't rhyme with retirement." He later became a local legend, the only bandit ever to rob with manners and a sense of literary flair. 8. The doctor who invented the horse-buggy ambulance. Before modern ambulances, the Wild West handled medical emergencies with one reliable tool: panic. But a frontier doctor named Valentine McGillicuddy decided to fix that, with horses. After watching too many patients die because they couldn't be transported fast enough, he built a custom wagon designed purely for emergency rescue. It had padded suspension, side access, and even a bell to clear the street. Basically, the first 19th century ambulance. Townspeople thought he was insane. Why waste a perfectly good wagon on the dying? They asked. But his contraption worked, saving dozens of lives during local skirmishes and outbreaks. Soon, other doctors copied it, and the idea spread across the frontier. He even joked that the hardest part wasn't treating patients. It was convincing people to get in after seeing how bumpy the ride was. So, next time you hear sirens, thank the man who first decided maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't drag the wounded to the saloon by rope. 9. The cowboy who rode his horse into a hotel. Some men check into hotels, others burst into them. One drunken cowboy in Dodge City decided that if his horse wasn't welcome inside, neither was he. So naturally, he galloped straight through the front doors of the local saloon hotel, shouting that his stallion deserved a drink too. The piano player stopped mid-note. Patrons dove under tables. The barkeep, bless his heart, just poured 2 shots of whiskey and slid them across the bar. One for the man, one for the horse. They say the animal drank his faster. When the sheriff arrived, the cowboy calmly asked if they had a stable suite available. Instead of jail, he got applause and a lifetime ban that was mostly ignored. It was the kind of chaotic frontier hospitality where a man could commit misdemeanor animal alcoholism and still be remembered fondly. The event went down as one of Dodge City's proudest and most alcohol-fueled misunderstandings. 10. The preacher who banned dancing, then accidentally invented. Line dancing. In the 1880s, a small-town preacher in Kansas decided dancing was the devil's cardio. He banned it entirely, calling it a sinful expression of unnecessary joy. The townsfolk obeyed, sort of. They found a loophole. If you didn't touch your partner, technically it wasn't dancing. So they lined up side by side, stomped their boots, and clapped to the rhythm, creating what we now call line dancing. The preacher was furious, shouting that, "This is still dancing," to which the crowd replied, "No, Reverend, it's exercise." Within a month, every barn in town was hosting non-sinful rhythmic gatherings. Ironically, the preacher's crusade against movement sparked one of the most enduring American traditions. It's proof that nothing unites people like the desire to disobey politely. Every boot-scootin' boogie today is a little thank you to one man's failed attempt to outlaw fun. 11. The sheriff who outlawed vegetables. In 1877, the new sheriff of a dusty Arizona town decided he'd had enough of rabbit food. He hated vegetables, genuinely couldn't stand the sight of them. So, in an act of pure culinary dictatorship, he passed a local ordinance banning the sale of lettuce, cabbage, and anything unmanly green. For 2 glorious weeks, meat was the law. The town butcher became a hero. The doctor, meanwhile, was treating everyone for constipation. Eventually, the mayor stepped in and repealed the Beef Only Act, citing medical and olfactory reasons. The sheriff reportedly grumbled that real men don't need salads. Ironically, he later lost re-election to a grocer. The headline read, "Sheriff tossed out like yesterday's greens." The whole saga became a running joke in frontier folklore, proof that the West wasn't won by gunfights alone, but also by deeply questionable dietary choices. 12. The woman who shot her clock. Meet Lottie Dino, a professional gambler and possibly the first person in the Wild West to invent time management by firearm. During a tense poker game in Texas, the saloon clock struck midnight, signaling closing time. The bartender shouted, "That's it, folks!" But Lottie wasn't done winning. She calmly pulled out her pistol, aimed at the clock, and fired. "Now it's earlier," she said. The crowd went silent, then erupted in laughter. From that moment, the phrase "shooting the clock" became local slang for staying past curfew. Lottie kept gambling, kept winning, and eventually retired as a legend, not just for her skills, but for literally stopping time with a six-shooter. In a world run by sheriffs and drunks, she was something rarer, a woman who played by her own rules and occasionally rewrote physics. Every modern casino's no clocks policy owes her a nod. The lady who made sure luck, not time, decided when the night ended. 13. The miner who tried to blow up a ghost. In an abandoned Nevada mine, a group of workers swore they'd seen a ghost, a glowing figure that moaned through the tunnels. One miner, tired of losing sleep and patience, brought a solution: dynamite. "If it's real, we'll scare it off," he said. "If it's not, we'll still scare it off." The next night, after another spooky wail, he hurled a lit stick into the darkness. The explosion nearly collapsed the mine and revealed the truth. The ghost was phosphorescent gas reflecting off a donkey's shiny coat. The miners survived, though the donkey quit immediately. The man became a local hero and a cautionary tale. Maybe don't fight the supernatural with high explosives. It was the Old West, where bravery and stupidity often shared the same hat. 14. The bank robber who forgot his horse. A would-be outlaw in Colorado spent weeks planning the perfect bank heist. Disguises, getaway route, timing. Everything went perfectly until he sprinted outside, money bag in hand, and realized he'd forgotten one small detail: his horse. In the panic, he'd tied it 2 blocks away, out of sight. With the posse closing in, he tried to steal another horse, but it kicked him square in the chest. The sheriff found him crawling toward freedom, wheezing, "I'm switching to trains." When asked later what went wrong, he sighed, "Logistics." The robbery earned him no money, a broken rib, and eternal mockery. Locals nicknamed him Walkaway Bill, since he was the only bandit in history forced to escape on foot, and fail at that too. 15. The town that voted to ban snoring. The tiny town of Calico, California, was once so quiet that residents could hear tumbleweeds breathe. So when one man's thunderous snoring began shaking windows, the townsfolk decided democracy had to intervene. They held an emergency meeting and, by unanimous vote, passed Ordinance Number 7, Prohibition of Nightly Respiratory Disturbances. Translation: no snoring. Violators faced a 50-cent fine or, ironically, a night in jail, where sleeping was impossible anyway. The local newspaper reported, "Peace returns to Calico, silence celebrated." The snorer, however, refused to back down, arguing it was God's music. The sheriff reportedly replied, "Then play it outside town limits." Eventually, the ordinance was repealed after tourists started visiting just to hear the forbidden snorer. It's the only known instance of a city turning sleep apnea into a public nuisance law, and proving that in the Wild West, even dreams could be outlawed. 16. The poker game that started a war. In 1881, a friendly poker game in El Paso turned into what historians politely call an unfortunate misunderstanding involving dynamite. 2 ranchers accused each other of cheating after one man somehow pulled 5 aces. Instead of arguing, they did what any reasonable frontiersman would. They called their respective ranch hands, who arrived armed. Within hours, half the town had picked sides, turning Main Street into a makeshift battlefield. The El Paso Poker War lasted 2 days, destroyed 3 saloons, and ended only when the mayor outlawed both poker and dynamite in the same sentence. No one remembers who actually won the game, just that the pot of $40 in gold was never claimed. To this day, the town's motto remains, "Play fair," or "Play far away." It's a reminder that in the Wild West, every bar table had a 50-50 chance of turning into a war council. 17. The judge who fined himself. Judge Roy Bean, known as the law west of the Pecos, was a one-man justice system who made rulings based on gut instinct and whiskey supply. One day, he accidentally fired his revolver through the saloon ceiling during court. The startled jury ducked, the defendant screamed, and Bean calmly declared, "That's a $10 fine for discharging a firearm indoors." Then he reached into his own pocket, dropped the coins into the evidence jar, and continued the trial like nothing happened. Locals adored him for it, not because he was fair, but because he was consistent. He fined himself again later for public drunkenness, though witnesses said he looked suspiciously cheerful doing it. Bean proved that justice may be blind, but in the Wild West, it was also slightly tipsy and armed. His courtroom motto, painted on the wall, read, "Law served here," sometimes literally. 18. The barber who fought a cactus and lost in Tombstone, Arizona. A barber named Clyde Slick Mullen thought he could impress customers by showing off his desert toughness. One day, he bet he could punch a saguaro cactus without flinching. The crowd gathered. The bet was $1 and infinite stupidity. Clyde reeled back, swung hard, and immediately learned why cactus needles are nature's way of saying don't. His fist looked like a pincushion. Worse, the cactus fell on him. It was over 10 feet tall and full of needles, creating what witnesses described as a moving porcupine in human form. It took 2 hours, 3 friends, and a bottle of whiskey to free him. From that day on, he became the only barber in Arizona who wore gloves year-round, not for hygiene, but trauma. The local paper ran the headline, "Man Loses Fight to Plant," and thus ended the shortest boxing career in the West. 19. The bank teller who outsmarted a gang with math. In 1896, a gang of 4 masked robbers burst into a Kansas bank and demanded all the money in the safe. The teller, a quiet young man named Henry, nodded calmly and said, "Sure thing. Just give me a few minutes. It's a time-lock safe." He explained that the vault wouldn't open until 9 a.m., a detail he completely made up. The robbers, unfamiliar with modern technology but afraid to look dumb, agreed to wait. Henry then began checking the clock, which, coincidentally, he wound back every few minutes. After 2 hours of this nonsense, the sheriff arrived and arrested the increasingly anxious bandits. The whole town celebrated Henry as a hero, though he swore it wasn't bravery, just weaponized nerdiness. It's the only known case where arithmetic and lying politely saved an entire bank. Somewhere, the spirit of algebra smiled that day. 20. The prospector who claimed to find gold in his beard. Every boomtown had its dreamers, but none quite like Gold-Tooth Jerry. One morning in 1875, Jerry burst into a Colorado saloon shouting that he'd discovered a new gold vein on his own face. He claimed tiny gold flakes had fallen into his beard while panning the river, and now brushing his chin produced a daily income. People laughed until they saw the glitter. Turned out, Jerry had accidentally smeared fine river dust mixed with mica, a shiny mineral that looked like gold. But rumors travel faster than facts. Within days, miners were dipping their beards in the river hoping to strike follicular fortune. Someone even tried to sell beard panning kits. By the time the truth came out, half the town looked like they'd lost a fight with a makeup artist. Jerry became famous anyway, forever known as the man who single-handedly invented glitter beards, a full century before hipsters made it cool. 21. The saloon that served soup instead of whiskey. During a liquor shortage in 1883, one Nevada saloon faced a crisis. Thirsty miners, no booze. The owner, desperate to keep business alive, came up with a terrible solution. He filled whiskey bottles with beef broth, added brown dye, and called it Western Reserve Whiskey. At first, customers didn't notice. They'd slam their shots, cough, and say, "That's got a kick." The illusion worked, until someone ordered it warm. The smell of soup filled the bar, and the truth spilled faster than the broth. A riot nearly broke out, but the owner offered free biscuits and called it the first all-you-can-drink tavern. Strangely, it caught on. Locals started calling it the sober saloon, where you could get drunk on sodium. It became a novelty stop for travelers, the only bar in America where hangovers were replaced by heartburn. 22. The cowboy who invented sunglasses with gunpowder. Some men protect their eyes from the sun, others try to blind it back. In 1878, a cowboy named Levi Branson got tired of squinting during cattle drives, so he decided to invent Funnier sunglasses. His method? He mixed gunpowder and soot, spread it over 2 pieces of glass, and wired them to a hat brim. The result looked like 2 smoked windows stapled to his forehead. Locals called it the most suspicious face in Texas. The lenses were so dark, he couldn't see his own horse. Within minutes of riding out, he crashed into a fence, spooked the herd, and accidentally shot his own hat off. Miraculously, he survived and patented nothing. But he did inspire the term smoked glass, which later became an actual product made by people who weren't concussed. Levi's experiment proved that the West's greatest danger wasn't bullets. It was imagination combined with zero safety standards. 23. The sheriff who made a chicken deputy law enforcement was hard to come by in small frontier towns. So, when Sheriff Amos Fenn in Utah lost both his deputies to a poker binge, he deputized the only living soul nearby, a chicken. He named her Henrietta, pinned a tin star to her neck, and declared her Deputy Peck. The townsfolk thought it was a joke until the next day, when Henrietta scared off a thief by flapping wildly in his face. Word spread that the law has wings now. Soon, people brought their disputes to the sheriff's office just to see the bird preside. She even had her own feed jar labeled official rations. When Henrietta disappeared one day, the sheriff held a funeral with full honors, declaring she served with courage and occasional confusion. Years later, locals said she'd been the most effective deputy they ever had, mostly because nobody dared get arrested by a chicken. 24. The man who tried to lasso lightning. In 1889, during a massive thunderstorm in Kansas, a blacksmith named Earl Sparky Dugan decided he could capture lightning, like catching a wild horse but faster. He built a 20-foot metal lasso, climbed his barn roof, and shouted, "Come and get me, thunder!" The lightning obliged. The strike blasted him off the roof, vaporized his hat, and set the barn ablaze. Somehow, he lived, minus his eyebrows, and with a permanent static charge that made his hair stand on end for weeks. Locals said you could light a candle just by shaking his hand. Afterward, Sparky retired from meteorology and opened a hardware store where the sign read, "Our tools are shocking, but safe." He never caught lightning, but he did become a human weather warning. If his hair stood up, everyone else ran for cover. 25. The drunk who accidentally invented the stop sign. In 1895, a tipsy carriage driver named Rufus Tate caused a traffic disaster in an Oklahoma boomtown. After clipping 3 wagons, a lamppost, and a man selling beans, he stumbled into court claiming it wasn't his fault. "Nobody told me to stop." The judge, exhausted and covered in beans, snapped, "Fine. Next time, I'll nail a board in the ground that tells you to stop." And he did. The next morning, a crude red-painted plank with the word "stop" appeared at the intersection. It actually worked. Accidents dropped instantly. Soon, other towns copied the idea, calling them Tate boards. Years later, automobile traffic adopted the concept, and the modern stop sign was born. Rufus never got credit, but his hangover shaped road safety forever. It's poetic justice. One man's inability to quit drinking led to the only sign in history that saves lives by telling you to quit moving. 26. The train robber who sent a thank you note. Blackjack Ketchum wasn't your typical outlaw. After robbing a train near Folsom, New Mexico in 1899, he discovered the passengers were mostly broke settlers. Feeling guilty, he returned half the loot and left a note. "Thank you kindly for your patience. Sorry for the inconvenience. Yours truly, Blackjack." He even included a PS, "Please don't shoot next time." The press dubbed him the Polite Bandit, and folks weirdly admired him until his next robbery went wrong. During the attempted holdup, he mistimed his jump, missed the train entirely, and knocked himself unconscious in the dirt. When the posse caught him, he was still holding his revolver and his manners, saying, "Good evening, gentlemen." He was eventually hanged, but locals still tell his story as proof that even in crime, a little politeness goes a long way, just not far enough to escape gravity. 27. The town that fired its sheriff for being too honest. In 1887, the frontier town of Silver Spur had a rare problem: a sheriff who actually followed every law. Sheriff Milton Dodge refused bribes, banned gambling, and even fined himself for jaywalking. The townsfolk, used to chaos and entertainment, were furious. "He's killing our fun," they complained. Saloon profits dropped 70%, and even the church lost donations because nobody had poker winnings to tithe. So the town held an emergency election, not to thank him, but to fire him. His replacement? The very bartender he'd once fined for serving whiskey to a goat. Dodge left town quietly, muttering, "Honesty's a fine policy, just not here." Within a month, Silver Spur descended into mayhem, and they begged him to return. He didn't. Instead, he opened a traveling lecture series titled "How to Lose a Job by Doing It Right." It sold out everywhere, except Silver Spur. And there you have it. 27 moments proving the Wild West wasn't wild because of danger, but because nobody had the faintest clue what they were doing. It was a chaotic playground of courage, confusion, and creativity, where even the laws needed babysitters. Which of these disasters deserves a medal for stupidity? Tell me below. And remember, if you think today's world is crazy, at least no one's arresting trains anymore.